analogy where the sales rep in this motion or in product-led sales acts more like a Sherpa. So it's like marketing and all of the things you do traditionally get Paul to basecamp at Everest, which is get them to the product, understand that this thing could solve their pain. Then the salesperson, the Sherpa, says, hey, you don't know what you're doing here. Let me add a ton of value. Let me help you up this mountain. But ultimately,
I can't actually think of a better person to actually lead us off. That's right. Episode 1, David Barron, Director of Sales at HubSpot. So let's do it. David or Dave?
Dave's okay. Yeah, actually, I like either or, but my friends mostly say Dave.
Let's go with Dave. So typically, here's how I start off. I read back your resume, top to bottom. I got it off of LinkedIn. I hope that's not weird. It's just any connection can download, your profile, and we'll go from where you started, education, and just work our way up. And stop me if I get something wrong, or then we'll go into some high notes.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So education, James Madison University. That's Virginia.
Yeah, Virginia.
And then first role was Gen B product manager.
So technically that's correct from LinkedIn. But my first job actually out of school, I was a pharmaceutical sales rep. So I did like cold calling in person. The reason it's not on my LinkedIn is because that company got shut down by the FBI and DEA. And I don't want random people from the past coming back. I had nothing to do with it. It was a terrible situation. I was only there for like 10 months. It was my first real job, but it's not on my LinkedIn for a variety of reasons. But so Gen B is, yeah.
Okay. I feel like I don't want to go deeper there. I don't want to kind of get you in trouble down the line.
It could be just a totally separate, maybe episode 100, we'll do a deep dive on that. It was a pretty formidable experience for me, not on the, oh my God, the pharmaceutical industry is just really not for me, but in terms of sales, because it was pure like walking into hospitals and doctors' offices. Cold calling in person is infinitely harder than doing it on the phone, which I've done as well.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, we all know Director of Sales at HubSpot. We're going to get to that. Like that's the real place where I think so many people are going to just kind of say, whoa, let's zoom in on what you are doing and what you picked up. But what a crazy experience. So, okay, but you do that. Then you go to Gen B where you're a product manager for 1 year. Then you go to Smart Bear. So you're, you wear a whole lot of different hats on the sales team for basically 2 years. And then you get to HubSpot. And how long have you actually been at HubSpot?
I think I was employee like 704. And yeah, so that was 2014, which is just kind of wild. So I've been in HubSpot like 8+ years.
Okay, so first real job that you ever got paid, was it the pharmaceutical sales that we're not going to talk about, or what was the first job you got paid?
No, I worked at, for anyone listening in the New England area, I worked at Abishan Hardware. It's like kind of like a local hardware store chain. So I worked the register, built wheelbarrows in the back, filled propane tanks, mixed paint, helped people find random nuts and bolts. So yeah, that was like my kind of like after school job that I had, and I worked there a little bit during college, but mostly during college I waited tables.
Hey, me too. I was a waiter at a country club golf course, and I ran the pool in the summer. It's one of the best jobs ever. What was worst job ever? Worst.
So I had this like month-long gig actually in college. I had met this guy at Abishan Hardware. He was a customer and he just liked me. And he was like, hey, I have this, I basically like stock shelves at auto zones and places that sell auto parts. And I need someone to come help me stock shelves for like a month at a few locations. It pays $20 an hour. I was like, whoa, I think I was making $9 an hour at the hardware store. I was like, this sounds great. It was mind numbing. it was like thousands of little parts. You had to scan, label, place directly on the shelf. And it was like, imagine this massive stock room. It was like we showed up at 7 in the morning, and it was just till like 7 at night or whenever the store closed. It was just making your way through the entire stock room. Never again. The pay was worth it at the time, but I remember just leaving the first day and being like, I can't believe I committed to a month of doing this.
Hey, you doubled your pay, and it was interesting. And okay, so let's switch it up to HubSpot. So you get to HubSpot, you're 704 number employee. What were the first couple of years like? I mean, HubSpot, was it really scrappy? Was it all built out? Like, what were some of the systems and like what was the core tech stack? Like, what were you living in?
Yeah, it's funny. Like HubSpot's still pretty scrappy. We're still building systems. So at the time, and I didn't know this when I was hired, I was pretty green. I had like a bunch of different job experience, and it wasn't my first job out of college, but I was still pretty green. I didn't even know that HubSpot was like on the verge of going public. So I started in like I was like the last day of August or first day of September of 2014, and we went public in October. Like literally 3 or 4 weeks after I started, we went public. But for the first 2 years, I worked on our free CRM and Signals and Sidekick products, which was our sales tools. Um, and so we operate as a startup within HubSpot. So we had our own P&L, we had our own management structure, we had our own billing system. So like we used Stripe and HubSpot used something else. And the only thing that was really similar is that I showed up to work at the HubSpot office and HubSpot paid my checks, but everything else was totally independent. At the time we used, so this is like pre real sales tools, right? Like we were building sales tools, like sales acceleration tools. So at the time, it was like Yesware and ToutApp were our big competition. Obviously, you don't hear much of either of those anymore. But we were
Yes,
on
where
HubSpot.
yes, where I remember. Yes, where I definitely remember. I remember
Yeah,
Boomerang.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
I remember. Oh, so you were early days, and you were on this silo or this. It was almost a startup, and so you operated with. So wait, so in the interview at HubSpot, they never said, "Hey, we're about to go IPO. Here's your equity grant."
I so like I just wanted. So here's the thing. I knew Mark Roberge, who was the CRO at HubSpot. He was like one of the first salespeople. He was kind of legendary in the Boston tech scene for being like the sales leader. So I knew him, or I knew of him, and I was interviewing with him, and he would be my boss. And I was like, I don't even care. And the pay was 20% more than it was at Smart Bear. And I was like, okay, so I get to work with Mark or for Mark and learn for him. They're doing this weird thing that's like freemium CRME, trying to figure it out. That makes sense for me. And the pay is more. And so I found out we were going public after I started, but yeah, my offer sheet had like, you get X amount of shares. And I was like, whoa, that's really cool. Like, I don't know what this means. And it wasn't like super meaningful because I think I was probably one of the last employees hired at the highest strike price we had before we actually went public. So it wasn't like, it wasn't life-changing money or anything like that. It was like very small at the
new
time,
new
even for me.
new car money.
It was like go out to eat once a month money.
San Francisco. Go ahead. San
Yeah,
Francisco.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, exactly.
So okay, so you're in HubSpot. You're doing what you love. You're working with Mark. Um, what were the like the one highlight, like the memory of either a best win or best deal, or like did you ever do some crazy outbound tactic and get this epic meeting?
We were fully inbound, so we actually had too much demand. Um, I think the highlights for me were like a lot around like the camaraderie of the team. We were so tight, and it was engineering, product, marketing, sales, service, all in one room. There were like at the peak, there were probably 40 of us, but when I started, there were maybe like 20, 25 of us. And so it was like we get off the phone and we'd close a $50 a month deal and we'd be high fiving, and the engineers would be like, this is crazy. People are paying for this. And the PMs were like, what did they want? What did they want? How did you pitch it? That sort of thing. And so, yeah, when I look back at that time, I think it was fundamental for me in the business because we were trying to figure out freemium, or what is now known as PLG. because at the time, maybe like 3 companies were doing it well at scale: Atlassian and Dropbox. I make the case for Intuit in that bucket, although it's slightly different based on what they do. But I didn't have like, dude, at the time, a big deal for us was 5 seats of $50 a month. Like 250 MRR was like the craziest deal of the week for us. I remember there was one deal kind of towards the end, and I think I sold 400 seats at a 90% discount. And it was like the deal was like 1,000 MRR or something like that, and it was like the biggest deal we had closed. But because we didn't like, that wasn't our target market, we were like, I don't know, how much do you want to pay, because we're not going to probably be able to support you, and like, can you just use maybe like a little bit of the tool, and what is it worth to you? And they're like, it's worth like $8 a month for our team. Like, great, when do you want to sign? Here's the link, go for it and pay. But yeah, no, like, I mean, there's no like striking like, I won this deal or this account. It was more just kind of the process we went through. That's like, I say it a lot, like my ideal job is recreating just the atmosphere that we had on that team. And because it was just so unique, and I think each team I've been on since has had its own flavor of like just energy and buzz, but it's never been quite the same as that original, like what we call the original sidekick team at HubSpot.
The sidekick team. Oh my, that sounds exactly. I know what you mean, because I felt something like I was super early at Double Dutch, and it was this scrappy. We were way out in the mission of San Francisco. Everyone else was downtown FiDi. Yeah. It was a scrappy company, and that's what it was. It was all these different floors of the team, and you'd go up to like the 7th floor where all the engineers and had the view, and the PMs and product, and the CS team had its own floor, and then the sales. We had the old Wix office, and it was just this like massive, all the SDRs, all my friends, everyone just really just trying to take the market. And it was so fun. Like, you learn more in 6 months in that environment than anywhere else. Like, I love it. Okay. Yeah. Sidekick team was your biggest, let's call that the biggest win from the HubSpot era. You mentioned PLG, and that's going to be a big, topic here throughout. So just, PLG, product-led growth, like so many different definitions. Just, it doesn't have to be perfect, but how do you define PLG?
I have a pretty short definition, which is it is just a distribution channel through your product where the customer or the prospect gets their first value via the product and not via a webinar or a white paper or cold outreach or something like that, or a form fill on the website. Yeah.
But why does it feel like just this year, like everything is popping up, everyone's talking about it? I mean, I follow a lot of, like OpenView and Kyle and, some great leadership. Like they're making it actionable and they're breaking it down, but it's becoming so talked about. Do you think, is this the biggest like tectonic shift in sales, or is it getting overplayed?
I think it's overplayed. We people in tech tend to attach themselves to the latest kind of trends and buzzy. Like, do you remember a few years ago when like growth hacking was the thing? Like everyone calling themselves growth hackers. Cool. Like that didn't last too long. And then there was this like brief era of conversational marketing, and that is really just chat on the website. Or in your product. And so I think this is like a thing that happens in tech these days. It's just kind of like trying to create categories or new ways of thinking about things. PLG is interesting. I think there's certainly more legs than those things. But from the amount of startups I talk to kind of on a weekly basis, it is not the strategy. So I hear a lot of folks being like, oh, our differentiation is with PLG. Like, well, in my mind, I'm like, okay, but that doesn't make any sense to me, because you're just distributing through your product. Like your product is the main distribution engine. It's essentially like a marketing channel to provide value. So I don't know. I think there's certain benefits to it. I think there's a lot of companies that we look at that we say, whoa, this is the greatest PLG company. So Stripe and like Dropbox, or I don't know if Box is, but Dropbox certainly, there aren't a lot of companies who have scaled to a huge revenue number as just like PLG all the way. And I think this is why people are coming around to this, like, okay, well, there's like this product led sales thing too. And then like all these businesses actually have a sales team. They're just talking about the product motion more than anything because it's unique in the moment. So I also think, by the way, Paul, it's like really hard. It's like really hard. And it's a strategy that you have to commit a lot of resources over a long period of time to get right. It's not always the right strategy for everybody. And if you think about it in the way that I've defined it, it doesn't mean a free product. It doesn't even mean necessarily a free trial. It's like, can someone experience something in the product before they purchase? And so the ideal state to me is like more or less the HubSpot state, which is you have this massive free product that we give away for free. And then there's kind of tranches of paid above that. And you're trying to drive acquisition through the free product, basically bring features down over time that commoditize to protect yourself against low-end competitors. But I mean, that's like in a state where we started doing this on the verge of going public. Like it wasn't a blank check, but in theory, it was a blank check to figure this out and just dump resources into it. I think for a lot of startups, like, just don't have that. And so I think it's okay to start with PLG is like a piece. We have like a free trial over here, but like, let's build a business.
Yeah.
And we just need to acquire users or customers. We need to get them activated on the tool, and we need to make them successful and get them to pay us money for it. And so whether you do that via PLG and that's your whole focus or not, I think both is usually the answer here. It's like if you have a little bit of PLG and then, traditional business building, like that's actually probably what you want to do.
It's funny hearing you describe it. Like you've got so much experience, you've seen it from the HubSpot days and you've seen it pan out. And it's like, it wasn't as topical. It was probably called something else. I mean, obviously free trial, freemium.
We just called it freemium. Like we called it our freemium business, and we called it, this is kind of an interesting thing. So when we were trying to reconcile, we had this like kind of traditional SaaS go-to-market engine that was much bigger. That is what took HubSpot public. And then we were trying to do this Skunkworks freemium thing. We always referred to them as our content funnel and our code funnel. So basically saying like we have these two funnels of acquisition. One is via content, traditional inbound, and yes, outbound. And then the other is through code or product. And so there were slides where we'd have them like kind of layered on top of each other and things like that. And now we don't use that verbiage anymore, but it's because we are a product-led business in essence. But I mean, we still do outbound. We still have a big sales team. We have a big BDR team. I think doing both is usually the answer if you want to get to scale.
So, well, that's everyone on the sales side of it. I feel like this whole year, sales teams and AEs, BDRs, sales leaders, like they don't seem as vocal about it, or maybe everyone's a little bit, kind of sitting back on their heels. Is PLG going to kill off being a sales rep, kill off being an SDR or BDR? Like, how does this pan out?
So I think there's like a controversial way to say this, which is yes, but the truth, in my opinion, is it's going to kill the version of it today for the vast majority of businesses. What I mean by this is, I think to be a salesperson in the PLG world, you have to be less salesy. I've always thought about this kind of analogy where the sales rep in this motion or in product-led sales acts more like a Sherpa. So it's like marketing and all the things you do traditionally get Paul to basecamp at Everest, which is get them to the product, understand that this thing could solve their pain. Then the salesperson, the Sherpa, says, hey, you don't know what you're doing here. Let me add a ton of value. Let me help you up this mountain. But ultimately, you have to make the climb yourself as the customer and purchase. And so I think you're going to start to see this merger of the sales SE persona. I actually think we probably have too many solutions engineers kind of lower down market. My belief is that salespeople should know the ins and outs of the product and not need a solutions engineer to sell most things. Now, there are tons of caveats. Like if you're selling to a highly technical buyer, you can't expect an account executive to know that. But I think it's just a mind shift change to consultative, adding value, kind of business advisory thing, and then showing the value through the tool. But I think all the things that as a traditional AE, like tie downs, asking and going through a good discovery, those things are still important. I think it's just when you jump into the product, you have to be able to tell this beautiful story that intertwines with that, where in traditional kind of B2B, maybe you don't really have to do that. Like there's no like demoing of the tool. It's like, let me sign you. We solve your problem. Let me sign you up. And like, you're locked in for 3 years. Like, good luck.
So what about like the BDR, SDR,
Mm-hmm.
that training ground or that on-ramp to becoming a really good AE? Like what's going to happen there?
I think we're already seeing this kind of shift. And again, I think depending on your price points and the unit economics, if you have anything like over probably like 800, 1,000 MRR, probably have a small outbound BDR, SDR team. But I think what we're seeing is the shift to like this sales assist in product, like when people are using it. So we have a massive team of really smart folks who, when you sign up for HubSpot, you get chat. And they are kind of this hybrid sales support person where they know a bunch about the product and they're gold on activation. We just want to get people activated. And then if someone is asking buying questions, we have a lead type, basically sends them over across to sales. And this org is actually a feeder into BDR, into account executive, but it's also a feeder into CS, and it's a feeder into product. And so for us, it's like this kind of wonderful org that adds a ton of value to our customers. We hire smart people, but usually like pretty early in their careers, like first job out of school. And then we funnel them up through the org with people who know the product and know the customer, which is like ingrained in our DNA. Is everyone at HubSpot, for the most part, is very customer centric, very product oriented. And so you basically have this huge swath of folks who are earlier in their career that have that DNA ingrained that we can kind of pull up into the other orgs. It's talent, feeding talent. So I think you're still going to see that progression. It just might be in a slightly different way.
It's interesting to hear your take. Yeah, it's a little scary if you're early career right now, or if you've been SDR, BDR, or if you've been leading those teams. But no,
I mean, we're early. We're early, right? Like, I'm not saying this like we're going to wake up tomorrow and every company is going to be like this. Because I think if you're still selling like really high dollar value enterprise products, you're not selling 150 or plus customers a month. You're selling 6 or 7. That's going to require a heavy outbound approach. And I think there will always be companies built there, because especially in, well, maybe not as much anymore, but in venture capital, because you get pressured to move up market. If you're VC backed, the question is always, when are you going to sell to enterprise? When are you going to move up to enterprise? Because the economics are generally better. And there's more now, including us, of companies who've kind of solidified in the mid-market or SMB space, but most companies get pulled up market really quickly, and then you need that motion. At least today you need
it. Yeah. Well, let's see how it pans out. I mean, I want to get some other opinions on it. I mean, I hear people talk about how important the product is. Like, if you're going to go that route, like, your product better be leaps and bounds better than others. But
it has to be good. I mean, that's certainly the prerequisite here, is like, you can't dump a bunch of users into a product that stinks. And that's why I said earlier, like, this is actually really hard to do. And it takes a ton of time, because most startups don't start with a product that's great. And so you're going to probably need some human help there, and you're going to need to evangelize. And you can do that with content and things like that, especially these days. And kind of doing what I would suggest most founders do anyways, which is just get your ideas out there, be seen, create a brand. But yeah, it's hard.
There's something in there that's so important, though, is like, you have to have that time horizon, or you have to be able to let it be a long play. And everyone across the team, the board, investors, everyone has to have that same vision, because if it's 6 months, 12 months, 18 months down the line, if somebody is looking for predictability or for forecastable revenue that's going to come in, that's where the sales team, I think, has always shined. So it's going to be interesting. Like, we'll see next year where this ends up. I'm going to push pause and shift us over to the final bit. This is meant. So you up for that?
Yeah, yeah, of course.
Okay. So, Dave, just what's going on with the stock market? What are you seeing?
Um, I mean, like in general, I think there's just free money for a long period of time. Um, too much. I mean, it's like supply and demand issues. I managed to squeak out an economics minor in college, barely. But I mean, the one thing I remember is the supply and demand curve, and obviously that assumes people are rational and markets are rational. Which, if I could go on an entire tangent about how that's the basis of economics, and yet not based in any reality at all, because people are not rational and markets are not rational. Um, I think it's super healthy. I think we were just in a place of exuberance, and like I think once we get through this, and healthy for the businesses and sustainability long term. I've always been a fan of building profitable businesses. Is like that's probably the goal of a business, is to like actually make money. I'm I certainly have a lot of empathy for all the folks that are getting laid off. It's probably gonna be a tough next year or next 16, 18 months. But on the other side, I think you'll see businesses who feel more like businesses and more conscious building. So I mean, what the market does or doesn't do, I don't look at. I
Yeah,
try to control. I try to control what I can control, and like
yeah.
try to
I
be
feel like
try to
I
be
missed
happy.
out on. I feel like I missed out on all the free money way back. Like, but I
Yeah,
was just starting. I don't know how long you were. Okay, so I mean, would you say you're a big investor? Is the stock
yeah,
market your main play, or like?
uh, yeah. I mean, I've been investing in the stock market and basic like whole market ETFs, VOO, VTI for 7, 8 years or so. Um, I like dabbling in alternative investments. Cough, cough. Not a good time for those things. Um, but no, I actually really enjoy some of like new platforms for alternative investing. So like I was an early customer in this company called Vinovest, and I put like very small dollars in, but I just like to like be a part of it. So that's like you can buy like wine and they hold it for you, and then like you see it appreciate.
I've heard of that. Oh my god, I
Yeah,
live
yeah.
live live on a vineyard. Like
I
there's a
know, I
vineyard
know.
in the house. Oh yeah, you've seen
Yeah,
it. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So like
How does
that,
it?
and
How does that work?
yeah,
How does that work? The Vino Vest.
you put money in, they buy wine for you. They store it, they charge you a nominal fee per month to store it, and then presumably they are experts in wine appreciation and what's good and what's bad. And so I think like like a paper 20% or 25% return since I initially put money in. And I just keep it in there like 'cause it's like cool, like I feel like I'm kind of like supporting them in a way. And then I was an early customer in here.co. I am friendly with someone over there, and that's like, democratizing short term Airbnb rentals, which is obviously like another tough place to have money right now, I think. But yeah, we do some stuff. And then I do angel investing as well. And all those checks I write off to zero. And I don't write a ton of dollars. But for me, it's more about the community and helping.
Yeah,
Because like founders and entrepreneurs give me a ton of energy, and I like solving those problems, and so it gives me an opportunity to do that.
I mean that's something I've just learned about in the past couple of years. But I mean I know we're both a part of stage two, and
Yeah,
there's the angel list just updated. Like they have a whole
yeah,
page where you can find syndicates, you can search.
yeah.
I've seen
Shout out, by
people.
the way, shout out to my friend Matt Bellotti, who I worked with at HubSpot. He was an intern behind me in 2014. He's the PM that worked on that.
Oh my gosh, no,
Yeah,
that is that
yeah,
is so cool to see it get launched. So yeah, check that out. Um, but just to back it up for anyone listening, we're going to talk investing and we're going to keep it simple. But VTI, tracks the stock market as a whole, and that's an index fund that anybody can check out. But we'll link to that, and then we'll link to the Angel List release. Um, Vinovest, have you had a bottle of wine that came from them, or have
no,
never
I don't
had?
really drink. So I don't know what good wine is. I don't know what bad wine is. I know. Let me take that back. I know what bad wine is, but no. So you can actually from your collection you can ask them to ship you some, and they will ship you a bottle from it. So yeah, I don't know. TBD. Like this could be one of
And
those scenarios where like in a year I get an email that's like shut down and your
I
investment is zero. But
I will volunteer. If you send me a good bottle of wine, I will taste it, and then I'll let you know if it's good
okay,
or if it's. All right. So no, thanks for sharing all this. And I think sometimes we like to just call out like a big purchase or like a big investment it can be, but like this year, what was your biggest purchase or investment? Was it stressful?
this year, I mean, I became a parent this year, and so I think the biggest purchase is probably the car, the family car, um, because we needed something that could carry lots of stuff and was safe. So yeah, we got a Volvo SUV.
So I know exactly what you mean about, yeah, got to get the family car. Yeah, we got a car this year. You got to, make sure it's a good one. But actually, those Volvo SUVs are pretty sweet. I test drove like the new XC90, and it's all like Google Voice activated, and like there's no buttons, and that thing has like serious giddy up. Like it accelerates.
It's like fast enough. I don't know. I remember when I was like at the dealership, so I did all the negotiation over email. And I was like texting the salesperson. I was like, all right, cool. This is the number. I'm coming in today. Have it ready. I want to drive it. And then if I like it, this is we'll just do it today. And he goes, this thing is so much fun to drive. And I'm getting in it and I'm like, this is like a family SUV. I wouldn't say it's like sporty in any way, but yeah, it has enough giddy up to get going on the highway for sure.
It's interesting to think about, like, not everyone goes and buys a car, but that experience, I don't know about you, but I went to a couple of dealers. I kind
It's
of
the
did
worst.
the research phase. I went online. I tried to kind of just get knowledgeable enough to like know, like, okay, here's option A, B, C, here's the pricing, here's good, better, best. Like, it doesn't directly apply to SaaS software, but I think there's something interesting about just doing it yourself for a real purchase and feeling that and then going in. Um, so what made you want to do it all online and just do like text purchase? Like,
I just like I just didn't want to deal with like the rigmarole of going into the car dealership and dealing with the car dealership people. Now, what I will say is like for some brands, especially Volvo, they don't operate like that because their buyer persona, like their ICP, like it's just this is just like a thing that they're doing. This isn't like yes, it was a big purchase, but for us, we were just kind of like, we just need this. I just want this car. It's just a car. I have no emotional attachment to it. It needs to do this thing, so let's do it. What I will say is like, even after I said yes, after the test drive, I was in the dealership for 6 hours, just sitting there while they like did paperwork. And you go and you sit with the finance manager and he like prints off all the like correlated papers out of this weird old fax machine thing. And I'm like, what are we doing? And you obviously sit there and they, try to do all the financing through them because that's where they make most of their margin. And they're trying to sell you all these like extra things because again, that's like where they make all their margin. And luckily at this dealership, I didn't have any of that. I think they told me what the average kind of W-2 is for their buyers. I was not at the number that they said, but I was like, oh, holy crap. Like, okay, now this makes sense why you guys just like, there's relatively little negotiation. They didn't really follow up with me. It was just kind of like, do you want this? Great. Let's just make this happen. And that was cool. I really enjoyed that. But I've been at other dealerships where you're just like, oh my God,
yeah,
please don't approach me. Please don't approach me. And then it's just like hard closing questions, which I get, they're salespeople, but I
I
don't
think
like it.
this will be interesting. Yeah, I mean, people can listen back to like your HubSpot story and your view on PLG, and then just what this experience, like private seller. I did my research, then just found somebody local and was like, I don't want to deal with any of the car dealerships. Like, let's just discuss, and I will write you a check. Final question. All right, just outside of SaaS, outside of sales, is there something cool you've been testing out, like a new app, a new tool, I mean, we talk about new techniques on here a lot. Like what's just something you've
Yeah,
done out?
yeah. I've been talking with a lot of entrepreneurs in the sales tech space recently. So I'm actually wearing their shirt today, Trumpet. Shout out Trumpet. They do these like collaborative deal rooms, and I've been a fan of this concept for a long time. We've talked about it at HubSpot for a long time, and we just have never done it. And they're doing it in a real way. And then this will be, I guess, slightly controversial, but like, I don't think there's a ton of value in Gong or Chorus in the way that they're building. I think it's real time intelligence when you're on the phone as a rep. And so, um, yeah, attention people need to know the product more. And we have all these traditional style salespeople who aren't producty. There's something in here to get them ramped that they need to know about. They need to know like pretty broad spectrum of information about like the buyer, the ICP, how those people work, but then also the product in depth. And I think being able to serve these things up to them when they're on the phone live versus Gong or Course, which is like, let me listen to this back. And that truthfully, when I use those tools, I put them on in the background and I take notes and then I send it to my rep. Or we listen live and I'm like, cool, cut it. All right, let me give you feedback.
So Gong or Chorus, they were super helpful or they were super important, and now it's not background noise, but it's just some. So what's your take on? So do you want everyone to be like running a meeting and having all these little like alerts and widgets and
No,
lights?
no, not everyone, but as a sales leader, one of the things you think about a lot is like time to ramp for your reps. Like I hire someone and then I need to get them on the phone and productive as quickly as possible. And one way to do that is, or one way to do that faster is to make sure that their questions are kind of answered in real time and adds this comfortability. So the pushback I hear a lot is like, well, isn't that distracting? Like, how many, every sales rep has two screens. They got their phone up, they're on ESPN or they're on this website over here. They got Slack up, they're taking notes over here. They're looking at the lead that just came in. Like,
Bloomberg terminal is, yeah, the tracker is on the bottom.
yeah,
Yeah.
like there's all of this sort of stuff. And I'm like, if anything, it keeps you in the moment more because you're focusing on this thing that's right in front of you.
Let's,
And I mean,
yeah,
becomes less valuable, I think, over time as the reps ramp and become better. But also, if your company evolves, the people
let's
who are
see.
the best at selling your software today, in 2 years, if they're still running that playbook,
And say it was transformational, but there
oh, it
is a
totally
new,
was. It
there's
totally
a new way.
was.
No, there's a new wave that's talking about this like in real time, but I don't think anyone has seen it play out. Like I think we need 1 year of seeing sales teams
Certainly.
get off of like the Zoom fatigue, and then hey, all the best, Dave. You man.
Yeah, thanks.